Our speakers today are Major General Andrew Hocking, CSC, Warrant Officer Cherie Wilkinson and Lieutenant Colonel Chris Gilmore. I will just quickly introduce all three, but they will file through for their speeches. Major General Hocking commanded at all levels in the Army, including Unit Commander of the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, and Brigade Commander of the 7th Combat Brigade. His military postings include a 12-month secondment to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, 6 months as a visiting military fellow at the University of New South Wales, where he researched and published a paper on optimising Australia's veteran support system. 18 months as the Deputy Coordinator of the National Bushfire Recovery Agency. On retiring from full-time military service, he was appointed as the first Assistant Coordinator General, National Resilience Capability Programs at the National Emergency Management Agency. Warrant Officer Cherie Wilkinson enlisted in the Australian Regular Army in 2003. She spent her service in the Royal Australian Corps of Transport as a cargo specialist until she transferred to the Royal Australian Medical Corps as a physical training instructor. Warrant Officer Wilkinson has served with 10 FSB, 3 CER, 1 RTB at Kapuka, 8 Close Health Company and 1st Combat Health Battalion in Townsville, ADFA, RMC, and is currently at the 2nd Health Battalion. Warrant Officer Wilkinson has supported rehabilitation with the Soldier Recovery Centres at both Robbo and Laverack, and the provision of allied health support, rehab, welfare and personnel management. Warrant Officer Wilkinson is deployed on Catalyst and Sumatra Assist and awarded the Soldier's Medallion in 2005. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Gilmore graduated RMC Duntroon in 2005, commenced his service in the Royal Australian Regiment. His service includes postings to the 1st and 3rd Brigade, serving in both 3 RAR and 7 RAR. Throughout his postings, he's completed a range of appointments, including Platoon Commander, Adjutant and Company Commander. He's deployed in operational service in Iraq, Afghanistan and Timor-Leste. More recently, Lieutenant Colonel Gilmore was the Headquarters Forces Command Staff Officer Grade 1 Current Ops. During 2002 of domestic and regional operations, including Op Bushfire Assist, Op COVID Assist, Op Fiji Assist. He's a graduate at the Australian Command and Staff course and currently the Commanding Officer of the 5th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment. Please welcome our lived experience speakers.
Yeah, really great to be here and just listen and learn, stuff that's not specific to the military. It's just specific to, humans that are trying to do better in life and whatever organisation they work for. And I love listening to bios other than your own, which makes you feel old, but just hearing the experience that we've got, not just sitting at the top here, but it'll be reflected out in this room, is an amazing army to be in. But I guess one of our questions is, can we organise some things here that takes it to the next level, takes the humans, the teams to the next level to give us the edge. Don't have all the answers to this, but I've sort of jotted down a few thoughts that hopefully just stimulate some conversation. I would say right up front though that I think, human performance, I don't know, it's a niche sort of word that I don't think we want to be a niche type of execution, and it might be just worth thinking about that as an idea. But sometimes you've got to have a niche, something to catch people's attention. But to me, this is far bigger than human performance. What you do with humans, individually and collectively, gets at probably the 3 biggest bodies of work that are going on around the country at the moment. And that is the Defence Strategic Review and how do we fight and win next time we're asked to do so. The Royal Commission into Veterans or Defence and Veteran Suicide and how do we make sure our people thrive and are healthy and that there's people around them that are making them thrive or helping them to thrive and healthy and be healthy. And then obviously other things including recruiting and retention and how do we make sure that we've got the numbers. So this ain't about a niche human performance thing. This is at the core of the things that are challenging our nation and require us as a group to respond to those challenges. So I think it's got a far bigger context. Don't really want to, though it's hard for me not to sort of talk about it at the human, battalion, sort of unit, company level. But I'm going to do a bit of that because I love that stuff. And you know, that's where some of our people, not all of our people, we do so many different things, thrive. But I think where I might be able to add value is sort of up in the sort of, well, what does all this mean at the strategic environment? What do we need to be doing in the up and out here before we do the down and in? Because if you don't get the up and out wrong, you will work your butt off for years and not get far. And that's problematic because it's not good for your human performance, and it starts to cue a words not deeds mentality, which erodes trust, and eventually you work against collective human performance. So let me graze at sort of all of those levels. I've gone off script because I like to go off script a little bit, but it loosely follows the brief. Look, I started, you know, why do we want to do this? What do we want to do? And how might we do it? Because I'm not a very complex person, although I try to think big and strategically, but connect it tactically and through humans, because everything gets done that way. Nothing gets done through structures. Everything gets done through humans. So these were my musings. So, you know, the why. I think for me, there was three things, and it taps into these big things, and that's an opportunity. So we want to win, but more importantly, we want to lose without falling apart. And as I read history, the losing without falling apart is actually probably the key ingredient of most winning units, who most lost substantially along the way. So it's just a different side of winning. But that connects with defence strategic review in our declining geostrategic circumstances. Why is human performance important? Because we want our people to thrive and be healthy. And their families the same, and not end up committing suicide at the worst end, or divorcing somewhere in between, or just not living their best life and being healthy. So that taps right in to a Royal Commission underway, and I think the general sentiment of society in that regard at the moment. And of course, the third thing of the why is because we've got to grow this force. 18,000 people within a pretty short period of time. So human performance is not niche. Human performance is actually at the centre of what could be the keys to many strategic outcomes that we must achieve. I then sort of, it's got to be bedded into everything, but I just want to talk about that strategically because this is what I see when I read. Sorry, I'm pointing at you, Jackie, but I've got to look at someone. I see a lot of energy around this at the Army level. I see a fair bit of energy around it at the Forces Command level. But when I go and look at portfolio budget statements and the things that generate prioritisation and resources, I don't see it at all. I see it, you know, alluded to, but not called out. And that will probably cause everything underneath it to either frustrate or fail. So there's some work to do. And it's an institutional whole of defence decision of do we really believe in this and why? And there's three whys: growth, veteran suicide, and the DSR, and winning, and being able to handle losing. So I think you've got to get some stuff in those big documents, and we've got some work to do. And with no disrespect to the Chief of Army or Sue at Forces Command, you know, unless Finance and Treasury are signed up that this is going to be the thing that gives us the edge, and therefore we're going to invest in it and provide time to it, then it will be very difficult as it flows through. And then probably the last thing is this notion of assigning resources to it. And I think it's the resource of money, it's the resource of time, you know, i.e. prioritisation. And I have said to a number of people, I did a little bit of work around recruiting retention, you know, with you and the wisdom of the ADF really. And one thing that really comes out of it is, you know, we talk about personnel as a FIC, as in a fundamental input to capability. And I look at our capability system as in how we grow kit. It's unbelievable behemoth, supported by evidence, resourced with money, a learning loop wrapped around it. Yet our words are our people are at the centre of everything. So I don't think people are a FIC. I think people are the capability, and the question is, what are the fundamental inputs to people? And it's a different way of using our own lexicon. And I think once we start organising around that and really believe that people are central to our edge, then resources start to flow, the full inputs that are required start to support what's needed. So let's talk about the what next. Again, just my musings, and I'm going to put this in an infantry environment because I find it hard not to, because it's left scars on my body and my mind and all of that, and of course I've loved being in that environment, but it's not the only environment it applies to. So to me, the what is, you know, there's probably 4 parts to the what, and this isn't all of it, and it's not overly scientific, but it's the physical, it's the intellectual in a physical environment, it's the drills and cohesion, some of which we saw today, and a 4th one, it's happy people that are enjoying what they do, and therefore they can do all those above 3 sustainably. Because once you lose them, you start again. And then team is no longer team. The physical side of things, I think straightforward, you know, endurance, faster, stronger, reduce injury. Intellectual side, you know, to me it's about, you know, better decision making, faster, being able to adapt your decision making. So not be a slave to it necessarily. When I write about drills and collective stuff, I write down, you know, time with teams. And I know Wellesley and Forces Command and others are really important on this. You can't build a team unless they're there together. And we pull them apart regularly, day to day, as we're supporting all the million things that we're trying to do. That's problematic. And this real focus of how do we try and keep our teams together for longer at the critical periods, which is what they love, by the way, being with their mates. No jokes, you know, that's us, isn't it? We've got to work out how to secure that time and secure that time with teams, and I know it's been worked on. But I also wrote, you know, teams, you know, what do teams do? What do you do in a team? Well, you either lead, you follow, or you support. And quite often you're doing all 3 things, even, you know, when you're a general and, you know, a battalion commander, you lead, following and supporting. And I think we just got to sort of understand that that's part of it. Right, and then the last thing, this happy, sustainable, stable piece, I think, you know, what makes people happy? Doing what they love, with the people they love doing it with, on their core purpose, and they also love getting better. People just love getting better. It's a real innate thing in us all, and the changing demographic love it more than we did. You know, we love, you know, my generation love getting on the rantan with our mates. The current generation don't care about that. They like being with their mates, but they want to get better themselves. Real powerful thing to keep them and to bring them in. And then I think there's family as part of this sustainable piece as well, and of course fun. You know, permission to have fun. I often say, and I've reflected a little bit, in fact, not permission to have fun, program it in. God, it's a free ingredient. Don't need any science. You just make it happen. But you don't just assume it's going to happen organically in a busy program. These are simple things. I don't have a scientific basis for it other than I like to have fun. And things like that keep me in. And I think they keep you in as well. So no science adds to human performance. And the fun piece, just food for thought. I do hear, and you know, Chris Smith, who's a good mate of mine, we've had debates over the years. You know, you don't need to be liked as a leader. And I see people looking at me going, oh, what's he going to say here? And I agree with that, but I think sometimes it's interpreted that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as a leader, and some people interpret it as, I don't want to be liked. And that suddenly leads to, no, it's not about fun, it's about mission. And we stop doing the things that are good. I don't know, the teams I've worked with that have performed well, they liked each other. They liked each other. They were all different. So there's something in that. The last couple of things for me before we sort of hand to the broader panel is the how. I think the first thing with the how, just simple stuff for me. You know, the bell curve, everyone sort of gets the bell curve. You know, we all sit on, don't deny the bell curve, right? There's bell curves here, whether you want everyone to dress the same and all be up in the top bar. Sorry, bell curve wins. There's a bell curve in teams. And I just simple things with the bell curve. Don't try and move the top end of it. Waste of time, no return on investment for what we do. Move the middle of it. And, because that's the masses, and move the tail of it. Because that's the limiting factor in a team. How many times have you been on a route march? God, this is frustrating. I've got to slow down. Right? And that's the problem with your team, not the individual. Right? And that's where I'd be working. And I know, you know, in previous jobs I've done, I've really worked hard to do that. Shift the masses, engage the tail. You know, we at 7 Brigade, you know, as I sort of mused on life, it wasn't an option whether you did PT. It was not an option. That's what we all did together. It's how we got to know each other together. And even if we designed PT for the bell curve. And I tell you what, we learned to like each other and have fun together. And the bottom came up and hundreds of them thanked me. Jesus, sir, you've changed my life because you forced me to do that. And I'm getting better. And I don't feel I'm left out from my teammates. Right? But sometimes people need a little bit of a nudge. This ain't discretionary because this is good for us all. And I'm not sure whether we quite do that enough. I think the measurement, the science here, I suspect some people in the room, Chris next to me, I don't want to speak for Chris, but you know, Chris is right in a unit and I probably was looking at that going, God, more surveys, more this, more that. But there is room for this science, but not to turn this into a science, but to argue for the money and making it a priority so that you've got to make some room for it. And then probably the last thing I'd say, you know, in terms of the how, compete, compete, compete. Everything is a competition. Don't avoid it because that's what we do. As teams, we compete in our core business. And I do. I think if you asked your people, how many of you have competed against someone recently, you will be really surprised. First of all, at how many people will say never, and then how many people will say not for a while. And for any of those who have been, you know, in the real business, it's friggin' highly competitive. And if you're not ready for that to come at you both ways and lose, you're gonna collapse, and your team will collapse with you. So compete, compete, compete at every opportunity. All right, I think I might leave it there, but you know, upwards, argue and win investment. Otherwise, you know, you're probably just not going to get there. It's got to be up in the key documents, and then use the science to support it, but keep it simple on the things that are intuitive, some of which I've mentioned today. All right.
It's just a short story of a lived sort of 12 months experience as my first year as a warrant officer, and basically what went wrong. Yeah, there was a lot. And to why it's shifted my mind and my thinking of why leadership matters, and I'll always make it as one of the first priorities in any team that I go into. So my first posting as a warrant officer, I knew that I was posting into a unit or say an area that was having issues in that small team already. So half the team I was going into hated defence, hated military, didn't want to be in anymore, but they had ROSOs and had no choice, so they couldn't go anywhere. Didn't like the location, didn't want to live there, and actually didn't want to be a PDI, but transferred across so that they could keep some of their military benefits still, but not feel like they were totally in the military still. So I knew that's what I was going into. So my instinct was, all right, I'm going to go in, be strong, give them their left and right of arc, opening address. This is how it is. Let's get on with it and let's do our job. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to be killing it. That's going to be awesome. Didn't happen. Response from that was a lot of members putting in psych leave straight away, February. A lot of members putting in sick leave, poor performance, and the one that sort of threw me is they would hide from me. Yeah, so I'm talking junior leaders, not diggers, would hide from me. If something went wrong, it was hidden from me. It was just like I wasn't really part of the team. I was sort of just like, we'll hide her over there, keep her happy and leave her alone. Yeah, so that didn't work and I was like, well, this is horrible. I've got to change tactics somehow. And I thought I, being new, was like, oh, I've got to fix it. I've stuffed up already. I went the opposite way. So I went, well, I'm going to give them what they want. Let's make them happy, leave them alone. I'll just pull away from a bit, leave them alone, let them do their own thing. Yeah, so within that first month, I heard it say, they didn't know I was in my office, I heard someone mention, we don't need our sergeants and warrant officers, we know what we're doing, we need them to leave us alone. I thought, all right, I'll leave them alone, leave them at it. So that didn't work either. Response to that, myself and the sergeants would work like dogs. We'd start at 6 and finish at 8. We were doing most of the lessons, most of everything. Yeah, so the corporals loving it. They were great. The corporals working well together as a team. They were having the best time at Morno's, going out for lunch, whatever. Yeah, they were having a great time. Oh, this is definitely not working, yeah? This can't be a thing. I'll change tactics again. This time I'll have mediation. I'll sit down with them individually, see what's going on, why, how can we work together, what can I do to make this a better working relationship for everyone and get us to work together? So I did that. It was almost like a negotiation. I was like, well, look, if you need that for your life and that's what's going to make you happy, this is what I need from you. You need to be able to turn up, do your job. We can't just have it. We can't just have it one way, yeah? So it's got to be a give and take. So more or less negotiated with everyone. It come out, it was all good. Everyone seemed happy. Short period after that, no one would work together. So the chain of command, corporal relationship, team, perfect. They loved everyone, didn't like each other. So it was almost like they turned on each other. And that was just due to being perceived that one person received slightly more than the other person in their negotiation. Well, if they're not working today, why aren't I working? Well, they're working Saturday, you're not working. It was just ridiculous. Anyway, so that didn't work. I thought, I'm going to have to change again. I'm running out of tactics. At the time, the place where I was at was short-staffed anyway, so they needed members to do other stuff. So I was like, perfect opportunity. They're working really well as individuals. We'll just keep them like that. So I will, come in. I will just keep them like that and no, that's all fine. And I will move them out to, to help other teams. So I gave each, CSM, you've got one each, here we go. They can help you with other things as well, like they're still soldiers first, they can help out with other tasks, be the PDI. I thought this is going to be great. CSMs are like super happy, they've got help, they've got PDI so they can direct, and I thought it'll be fine. It wasn't. So response to that, more psych leave, like way more than ever before. More sick leave, not being where they were meant to be. So would tell other CSMs they were with me, telling me they were with CSMs, they were at home. And it kind of spread through the unit. Yep, so now the whole unit, the whole area was aware of what was going on because now they had to kind of manage it themselves as well. So I've had, CSMs calling me going, what is going on? What are your PDIs doing? Where are you? What's happening? So now it was everywhere. So obviously sat down with CSMs, so I need advice. Like, I'm new warrant officer, please help me. A lot of what they'd told me to do, I'd already tried. We thought, okay. Anyway, so about this time of the year, it's PAR time. And I thought, oh, okay. So I sit down with the OC and we're talking PARs and we're going through, what do you think of this person? Normal chit-chat sort of thing. And we're like, oh, yeah, at Warren rank, blah, blah, blah. Keep going through. And I went home and midnight, I'm wandering the hallway again like I did all that year, trying to work out the whole team. I was like, no, this isn't sitting right. So they've openly said to several members they hate the Defence Force. Defence values should be poor right from the start. Next day I go to work and I see the OC and I said, oh, I really want to put them below one rank for defence values. And she's like, these are the outcomes, this is going to happen, you know, this is what could potentially happen from this if you do it. And I said, well, if I don't do it, you should mark me down for defence values because I'm lying on their PAR if I don't tell the truth. Anyway, so we did that. I was very lucky, I'll point out at this point, very, very lucky. My chain of command was super supportive. Like throughout this whole thing, my OC, CO, everyone, my chain of command going up, even the sergeants and that I had, very supportive. Everyone willing to help and try. So they'd help out with administration, whatever we needed to try and make this work. The unit was very, very supportive. So PARs come out. A couple of members out of that were like, well, sorry, ma'am, I needed that kick in the, you know, this isn't me, I'll do better. So I was like, oh, sick, that's awesome. You know, good result there. Other two went, well, maybe this just isn't for me. Transfers went in, Rosso was up by the time that went through. I was like, okay, well, if that's where you are at life, well, that's not a bad thing. It's just life, it happens, you know, it's part of it. So I post out of that unit, so I was only there 12 months, post out of that unit thinking that I have just failed everything. Yeah, that it was me, maybe me leaving's the best thing for it. I, you know, conducted my handover, didn't want to say too much about individuals because that's just handing it over, like you should judge people for yourself. So I left about February, I got a phone call. How the hell do you manage these people? This is a nightmare, what is going on? And I had to literally respond, I have no idea how to manage them. After 12 months working with the CO, working with the OC, I had no idea still what was happening or what to do or what's going on. Good news though, since then they're all transferred now and that unit's going great. However, I've now, like it's Christmas time, I've about to post my new unit into another new small team. Second year as a warrant officer, first year, stuffed that up massively. Yeah, so second year and I thought, oh, how do I go in my whole Christmas? How do I go in and not destroy this place? Yeah, I'll give it 2 months. If I'm stuffing up, I'm going to have to go to the boss and say, oh, I'm useless. Yeah, like I've got to do something. I'm not going to just, you know, ruin another team or have it go bad. However, good news, it's all going well. Yeah, it's really good, love it. Hopefully everyone there's happy, they seem to me. However, I've taken on, I did learn a lot from that year, which is, I'm now look back, I'm very, very grateful. I've learned so much in that 12 months that it was amazing when I look back at it. Being there, not so much. The two things I always check, and I actually write them down in my office at work that I check every week. Leaders have to change to suit their individuals or their team. You can't expect your team to change and suit my leadership style. Yeah, I tried it, it didn't work. I've never met anyone that it's tried for. And I look back at when I was looking at my warrant officers going, why is he expecting me to be like him? I can't do it. Yeah, so leaders should change their approach. You can't treat everybody the same. As much as we try to say that, and you should treat everybody the same, I found that I need to treat everybody fair, but not the same. Quick example, I have a member of our team that appreciates when they're doing something wrong or not doing the right thing or anything. I go, oi, you need to do this and this and this and this is why I get on with it. They go, oh, thank you, bang, done. The person sits next to that member, if I was to do the same, it would be a meltdown. Yeah, so that's what I mean about treating people fairly, but not the same. Before, when Ma'am asked me to come and speak here today, I don't know why I'm sitting around talking how PDIs don't work in the afternoons, yeah, talking around, and ask them all what they expect. What's the number one thing individually? Come and tell me throughout the afternoon what your number one thing is that you want from your leaders. And the two main things that they told me was respect and someone to fight for them. They were there too, that was like, it's probably 95% they were their answers. They wanted someone to be respectful and fight for their members. So hopefully I've got it right this year and we can continue on.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come down here today. And Jackie, thank you for reaching out to be able to be a part of this. I think you had some really wonderful insights there from Cherie as well, and from General Hocking. So there's not much more I could offer here, opposed to just some of my own experiences and where I'm sitting at the moment. commanding a unit at the back end of my tenure as a commanding officer. And just within the audience, I mean, I'm assuming there's some familiar faces, that a number of people are looking to go into either sub-unit command or unit command or into key platoon sergeant major appointments. I won't be that interactive, we'll wait for after lunch, but it's really unique because I'm at the point in my career right now where it's really dawning upon me that I'm in the last 3 months that I'll ever spend in an infantry battalion, in a unit organisation, which I think for all of us, and we don't really realise it until we leave units, that when we talk about teams, that's the foundation of Army's teams. Units are Army's teams, and the sub-units and the platoons and the sections and the time with teams and everything we do whilst we're in higher headquarters. I think sometimes we can get a little lost on what it is why we're doing stuff in the higher headquarters, and we can lose focus that it all needs to be delivered for that capability and where the rubber meets the road. I think you put it really well, so that as the headquarters, we need to be able to justify and fight up in order to then enable that capability down. And I probably can be reflective of my own time as a staff officer, and I'll talk about some of that human performance optimization, that it's real easy when you're not connected to the problem. And when we're looking at human performance, I think when we're building teams and we're looking to how do we build a team, the key thing as a leader in any organisation is you need to understand it's not about you. And it's really unique when I sit as a commanding officer and when I look at, say, the paucity of some of the key ranks I have within my organisation. The most difficult ranks I have to recruit, particularly as a battalion in Darwin, are sergeants, are warrant officers and captains, because they're the rank structures that didn't come into the organisation, didn't buy into it, and were a part of it from the start. We're asking them to join us in an area that for people who generally have young families may not be as appealing, say, as South East Queensland, that 89% of the Army all want to get posted to. So it comes down to how do we incentivise it, and how do we make the lived experience, to use the term, the buzzword we love to throw away, but how does that lived experience then meet the value proposition, another great buzz term that we're offering? And I think the key is it comes down to human performance is really, I think, is about culture. It's about a culture you're willing to imbue into your organisation. And it's a culture that as a leader at every level, you have to actually buy into and live. And the reason I'd say that, and if I liken it to a saying I offered to both my RSMs, it's we need them to buy what we're selling. Because if they're not buying what we're selling, they're not bought into the problem, and they're not going to be a part of the solution, because at the end of the day, in any organisation that's greater than about 30 people, the leader can't have all the answers. And as soon as we think we do, that's when we start micromanaging, that's when we start trying to have centralised control. And then that's also the time that we'll start finding in that human performance piece that they stop bringing problems to you. Because we've got a human performance, and I think we've had some great pieces to it. It's not just physical. There's an emotional, intellectual, and so there's a moral and an emotional component to it. And I think we need to look at it as almost as a complete system for human performance, as opposed to just something that how do we make them fitter, stronger, faster? Because in the 12 years of my career, I've spent in infantry battalions. I've deployed operationally 4 times within an infantry battalion context. It's not the thoroughbreds who are always the best performers on the day. And it's not always those soldiers or those junior commanders within your team that when the chips are down or there's a bad situation or something happens that isn't the best, sometimes they're the people that step up the most. And you see it even just in exercising. Sometimes things get hard when it's cold, wet, people are hungry. It's not always the guy who's got that, the great hairline, the chiseled six-pack, because I have neither of those. I'll just use that as an example. But sometimes it's that young soldier who come from the wrong side of the tracks, who might have actually had you might have already had a couple of run-ins with that young man or woman. But when it's driving rain sideways, they're cold, they're wet. Sometimes they're the ones with the best morale and keeping it on and keeping the team together. And we need to really think about that when we're optimizing that human performance for the team. I think any commander in Army, and I'm not alone here, would be a liar if they said they've got everything right. And I think one of the things we miss a lot in Army as leaders is a lot of the time we don't sit down and be honest with our subordinates about the things we've got wrong. And I think a lot of the time we like to we confuse being right over being, sometimes we can dilute being right over being righteous. And when we're trying to build our teams, I think it's really, really important that we also focus to pass our experience, not from always what we got right, but sometimes what we got wrong, and actually show a piece of humanity and a bit of humility in that context of building teams. I think that is also a piece that establishes trust. It also establishes trust in our teams that if the leader is willing to actually show that they're a little bit vulnerable, has a shred of humility, that when the followers make mistakes, because if we're going to empower them and then task them and let them spend time with their teams and get after it, we also need to accept that they're not always going to succeed and there may be elements of failure. And if we're going to do that, that first piece of trust is they need to know that that failure isn't fatal. And that together, as a collective team and as a command group, that you're going to go on a journey together. Now, I've had a few really big examples of that in my career, and I'll happily share it with people across when we come to questions, examples. But probably one of the key examples I can offer, and it's one I've viewed, it's not one I got to do personally because it's much easier to speak about other people and their successes, would be one of my company commanders following a suicide within 5 hour. Last year, day after Anzac Day, had a soldier make a really unfortunate decision that they were going to end their life. What I saw was a reaction from what I saw was an outstanding command group within that company, and thankfully and gratefully from Forces Command, we were supported to get their mates to the funeral to see him off. But what that company did under that leadership was to build a stronger and better team together. They really made sure they galvanised themselves from the experience. They become tighter, and they made sure that what they did was to ensure that they honoured their mate's memory as well. So everything they did, they wanted to do that little bit better, that little bit faster. They were very open about the way they went about each task. And what I saw from an outsider as the battalion commander within a company was a group of humans seeing adversity and making sure that it didn't happen again, and making sure that they looked after each other. Now, interestingly, that same company only about 2 months later had a soldier on the way to work involved in a very serious vehicle accident in a coma, expected to pass away that night. He made a miraculous recovery, but it's amazing what him having a new girlfriend did. Because he literally pulled his discharge up the morning before he had the vehicle accident because he just met a new girlfriend. He was desperately in love. But the same company that, from that previous experience and that previous tragedy, how much more quickly they bounced back when they had a mate very seriously injured. They then deployed only a matter of weeks later to Indonesia on exercise Garuda Shield, and then subsequently then to Wirajaya. But the speed at which they looked after each other, they got around the family of their mate who was hurt in the second car accident. What I saw then was the epitome of the human performance optimization, because as a team, they were there for each other. They were there to get back on it, and they were there to get back in the fight at the very first opportunity that they could. And I think when we're looking at a lot of the science behind it, I'd offer to all of us, and to be contested, of course, that it's more than just the individual. It is about teams. I think we need to understand the role that adversity can have in building teams and keeping structures. I do remember once upon a time a public affairs officer locking me in the back of an ASLAB while I was getting a pint of saline put in me and taking my platoon on patrol. So we need to understand that and really seek, not that we shouldn't seek tragedy, but we need to, when it happens, understand it, or when adversity happens, understand it, and then look to make sure our teams can understand it, process it, can do their best in the situation, build trust in training to failure, so that way when we do train and we do push the envelope, that our subordinates don't know that when a mistake is made that it is not terminal nor fatal, or there's no the personal risk is only their own perception of their own self, not of the team or the organisation, and that we actually encourage people to do what it is they join the Army for, because none of us join the Army not to be the best version of ourselves each day. And I think that goes for our subordinates too, and we need to keep that in mind. I personally, I've had an absolute ball in my time in Army. I think it's a great career, it's a great job, and I think we just need to make sure that experience is the same for our subordinates.
So when we talk about the profession of arms, it's very much the science and art, and what I'm seeing with human performance very much lies with the science. And there's a lot of good work going on at various levels, but it never seems to be universally applied. And I'm just wondering whether this is because of resources, as you said, or is there a level where command cherry picks what they want to kick out of the human performance optimisation and applies it to their formations and their units? Or should we be trying to, like you said, resource it and then have it implemented through a more universal system that everyone gets the benefit from human performance optimisation?
They used to study the military in terms of human performance, and then society would, learn off that. And and it's not just in human performance thing, in a lot of other areas that it's sort of flipping a little bit. I remember, it wasn't long ago when if I was up at 6 o'clock going for a run through Brisbane, I'd be sort of on my own. And now I'm getting passed by everybody, and none of them are in the military. And there's lots out there. So I think, I think there's a lot on the shelf there that, low-hanging fruit with the right resources, probably cheaper because it's on the shelf. I don't fully buy into but the military's different. We've got a different context, but same blood, same brain, same. So I think there is stuff that almost, if we had the will and probably less resources because it'll be cheaper, we could just go, you know what, let's import that and scale it and use it. I do also think, and I've held this view for a while, that I think SOCOM have done a lot of work in this regard over probably a couple of decades, but I'm not seeing a lot of it leach out into the bigger army. And I think that's a problem of the bigger army. And I have heard sort of different views of, but it's a different context. It's small teams in a high-end environment. I said, well, that's what the army is. It's small teams in a high-end environment. It's just lots of small teams that become big teams. So I think that like if we're looking for, to your question, low-hanging fruit that's scalable without necessarily a lot of having to do science behind it, it's probably out there, and that could have some quick wins straight away. Even things like, I just spoke to some the Special Forces team, learning to breathe, learning how to physically recompose in order to mentally decide quicker and then act. These are skills that we need every day, whether it's in Army headquarters in Canberra. So I don't think it is all about units. In fact, if your headquarters teams aren't performing, then your units don't win the argument to get the resources, to Chris's point, to perform anyway. Long answer to a short question. I think without much science, additional science, I think that is important, we could probably move and scale relatively quickly with existing products.
So can I add a little
Yeah, mate.
I think when we're speaking to a functional headquarters in this context here, when I found it much less. I found it much different when I was in the functional headquarters to now that I'm in a unit and managing it. But we need to be really, really careful about using the term universal application. There are lots and lots of SO1s and SO2s that have good ideas about universal application, but in the units, the dance cards are full. I'll go back to the 3 ranks that I have the most structure with, most difficulty filling, and that's Army-wide. It's Sergeant, Warrant Officer, Captain. And those 3 ranks are really where the rubber meets the road and all the good ideas that turn them into something that soldiers do. We've got to be really careful when we're looking for universal applications that we're not overloading the people who are the thinnest and that we need the most. Because we've got to really, when we're talking about human optimization here, human performance, we've got to make sure that the performance that those humans have is what Army needs to deliver capability. And if we get caught up in the science of it, we've got to make sure the science isn't universally applied that then harvests tempo away from the art of getting things done.
Can I just add to it as well? Sorry, Shred, did you have something?
You're right, so go.
But I thought, Len, I think your point is exactly the same, that there is no one size that fits all, but there's a good start product that people can adapt as a way of doing things. We talk about family as part of the human performance thing. I think the times I haven't been firing and therefore haven't really been there for my team, either, beside them, above and below them, whatever it is, it hasn't always been what's going on at the work environment, it's the other stuff. So, there's a secret there. There's a key that's not in the application environment that actually is often the key to unlocking how it applies in that environment. And, just food for thought, I look at, the use of gyms and all that type of stuff. Our families want to thrive too. They want to get better. They want to get, a lot of them want to get, fitter, healthier. And I just think, I go back to, for example, US. You go to a gym in the US, and it's full of families. And they're there because this is a unique opportunity for them to better themselves. They're doing packages that are provided that help them better themselves, not dissimilar to what is being applied to the soldiers. And then they go and have lunch together because they're in the barracks anyway. And I think, there's if we really want to take down barriers that sort of address the whole ecosystem of betterment, because, you raise the tide, then everything is good. I think, there's some answers there as well. Package stuff.
Sam Hodges, SO1 Psych at Headquarters Forces Command. More and more we're hearing about people being the fundamental input to capability. We need to grow in the middle of a retention and recruitment crisis. People are Army's cog. Why are we still hesitating to treat people in the same way we treat equipment when it's failing? If I rang up a CO and said 7 of your trucks under load and stress on an exercise have catastrophically failed, blown tyres, accidents, casualties, the whole Army would stop using that truck for a week while we do a retrofit and work out what is the issue. But I know from my lived experience as a psych that I don't get the same reaction when I ring and say, your section, your platoon is redlining. Mental health, suicidal ideation, there's an issue. We don't stop that ECN, we don't stop that section even. Why are we still stuck on this, hey, we need more grit, let's pull up our socks, let's fix the attitude problem? And how can we attack that sort of perception?
Just from seeing that things that I've seen the same, and I can't even speak, I'm part of leaders, I've never commanded much at all really, but they see it as a failure. That's how I see it. Like commanders would see that as I failed and they don't want to put that out there. Like I've been part of those teams that have been redlining and failing, and I myself have gone through and said, all right, so something's got to change, this isn't working, blah, blah, blah. And I've been told, I'll shut up and get on with it. Yeah, sick, that's going to help. But, and then, you know, when I step back years later and I think, oh, maybe they just don't want to fail. Or maybe, you know, like I can say, sir, I can't do that. My team's not capable of doing that task. When's the last time you've heard someone say, sir, no, we're not capable, can't do it. We're maxed. That never happens. They're like, oh, we'll make it happen. Oh, my guys can work till midnight. Yeah, so that's how I see it, and that's how a lot of people that I speak to in the OR sort of stream sees it, as they just don't want to look like they're failing. And it might not even be the case. It might just be stuff needs to get done, and I do see both sides.
Squadron commander who's attached to Battle Group Tiger only about 4 days ago say, hey sir, we're 6 days on, we're approaching 12-hour drive hours. By DRTMs, I need to give these guys a 24-hour stand-down period. I only had one motorised subunit for the activity, and we have to find a way. We have to find a way to get these guys the rest. So, you know, it was literally going line by line through generating drivers. But I think that there are commanders out there who have that moral courage to tell you when something's going wrong. I think the hardest part as a commander, and sir, ma'am, pretty well, sir, having commanded more seniorly than I have, but there are commanders out there who've got that moral courage to tell you. The hardest part as a leader is knowing. And I think it comes into, Sam, I don't know if you were, but when we're talking about the dashboards and the science and the human performance for it, I think, and me personally, as a leader, if I need to get a dashboard to tell me that people are overworked, I'm probably not in the provinces enough. Right? If I'm not in the cages, not in the province, if I'm not eyeballing soldiers, and my RSM's great for it, he drags me and says, hey, the fact finding can wait, right? It's just do the fact finder after we knock the diggers off. Let's go talk to them. And as you're walking along, looking at your humans, I think that as a leader at every level, from, you know, fire team right through to senior leadership, we need to actually have that touch point and engagement with our people, right? And yeah, you're right, and I think you make a great point. We say as Army that people are our greatest capability. Well, as a leader, unless we prioritise our people, and I think it just comes down to genuinely caring. Like, if your people know that you care, at least they'll, you know, I think that's when they're going to be willing to tell you what's really going on, and that then as a leader enables you to at least set the direction of where the organisation needs to go to achieve the goals that you need. Because if you sit in the ivory tower and you're very directive and you don't get any bad news, and when you do, you react badly to it, it goes back to culture. You're starting to set a culture where people don't want to come to work each day, right? I might not be right, and obviously I'll open it to be contested.
Yeah, no, I don't have much more to add. I think they're great insights, but maybe, you know, at the institutional level, Sam, just getting back to, you know, is it time that PERS is not a FIC, PERS is a capability? And I know we've got PERS capability and DG PERS, and of course General Fox now sort of heading it up. But it's not about the structure, it's the cueing of what you say when you do that. It's the statement you make to yourself as an institution, and then the people in it, that we need to manage this. People with a similar sort of discipline, cycle and resourcing, that we manage the platforms in which the people bring into action. So I do think there is definitely something in that. I think there's two other, you know, less science, more art, I guess. Yeah, let's say it. We are worried about, there's something in our culture that we are worried about being soft, because we think that will mean we'll fail when it's at its hardest. And I think that's an error in logic that really sees us steal from ourselves the opportunity to do good things for our people. And that there's a long sort of history in that. And then I think probably the last thing I'd say to it is, you know, it's not soldiers, but Australians. We're just can-do people, and we never want to lose that. But again, it's this binary way of thinking that if we start saying can't do, then we will lose can do. And I don't believe that is the case. I think these are the errors in thinking and the way we are framing things individually, sometimes collectively, that block some opportunities and lead to what you just discussed. But we're heading in the right direction, but we might need to structurally reframe a little bit in order to get it to where it needs to be.